A warm welcome to today's webinar, which is about identifying research gaps. And we hope that as a learning outcome, at the end of the webinar, you will have a better understanding what constitutes a research gap in the first place, and also to gain some insights on how the understanding about what the research gap is evolving as your research is progressing. And thirdly, to learn about how to articulate the research gap to others, which is a skill in itself. So it's not uncommon that at the start of the research journey, you might need half an hour to just communicate what your research is about. And once you manage to break that down into a single sentence, then you're good to go and to graduate, sort of. So with this, we have today the pleasure to have Professor Dr. Valerie Lindsay on our panel and Professor Dr. Bostian Gomischek. And I'm Dr. Andreas Meissner, one of the co-founders of the Doctorate Hub, and I will take on the role of the moderator of this discussion. And perhaps Professor Valerie and Professor Bostian, do you like to introduce yourself briefly to the audience?
Yeah, just
Thank you very much, Dr. Andreas. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I very much enjoy my association with Doctoral Hub and being able to be part of the kind of discussions we're going to have today. So my role in my academic life is as a professor of management in Abu Dhabi, the UAE. My area of specialization is international business and strategy, and one of the things I really love about my academic life is working with doctoral students. So both Dr. Professor Bostian and I have worked together as supervisors, but also independently, and we'll be sharing some of our experience with you today. So I'm delighted to be here and look forward to interacting with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Andreas, you said that there are some new participants. Usually, I'm actually often part of the webinars, so majority knows me usually. But as you have said, let me introduce you shortly. My area is quality management, but I have actually been in charge of PhD program at two different universities. We have together, as Prof. Valerie has said, actually supervised few of the students. We were actually at the same university at one point when we had actually almost 40 students, PhD students we were taking care of. I guess I completed 15, let's say, PhD completions, should I say. So yeah, we do have a little bit of experience, and that's why we are here trying to share this experience with you, and especially trying to answer as many questions as possible you might have on this topic. Thanks, Andreas.
Okay, then let's go directly into the discussion. As said, this is an open discussion round. If you do have any questions, then please put them forward. If there's something burning on your research that you would like to get clarified, this is the chance today. With this, floor open first to the audience. Are there any starting questions that you would like to raise? Anyone?
Can I thank you for the wonderful introduction by all the three speakers. I just started my PhD research in Australia. Right now, I'm having an issue with the research gap. So I'm not able to still get that research gap for my research area. My research area is basically to see the economic analysis of green hydrogen from hydropower. So as of now, I have been reading a lot of articles, of journal papers. It looks like somewhere along the path, I'm not following the correct path, because at one point of time I realized that I was reading every articles from head to toe, and later I realized that that was one of the mistakes that I was doing. There could be several such mistakes. So in this regard, if the panelists could advise me as to how should I proceed. Thank you.
Okay, so you say you were reading a lot of articles, but you're not managing to identify a gap for the research.
Yes, I realized that initially when I started, it has been about 7 to 8 months that I started my research on green hydrogen generation from the hydropower. That's my area. I realized at some point of time that I was reading all the articles from head to toe, but someone along the path advised me that you never have to read every part of the articles. So I felt that that was one of the mistakes I did, and I felt that I lost a good time there. Likewise, again, there could be some other strategies which I may not be aware. In this regard, I would like to request the panelists to guide me as to how should I go about, what are some of the strategies that I should follow. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Bastian, Professor Valerie, any first thoughts on that? Any responses? I would have one burning on my mouth, as Professor Bastian likely will know, but floor is open to you. You're muted.
I'm muted because I don't want to discuss actually this topic. It's a challenging topic. That's why I would like to leave it with the others. No, I mean, actually, what you, Karma, have asked is our second question. Rather, I would say, how do you find the research gap? Are there any specific steps in that? That was kind of our second discussion question. See, I mean, for you, a tricky question you are actually asking, because as you have said, you have spent 7, 8 months into that. That means you should be quite aware of all the literature around your research topic. My question would be maybe just, have you discussed those things with your supervisors? Do you have actually regular meetings and start, I mean, kind of talking to them in order to understand in which direction should you go? Because, I mean, I can now start discussing, let's say, with all of you, because that's the idea behind today's webinar. What is a research gap? You know, for me personally, a research gap is, should I say, a topic or a question that has not been answered yet good enough, should I say, or at all, by the existing studies and research within your research area. That's for me the definition of the research gap. So sometimes it's really not easy to find that research gap. I do agree with that, especially because I don't know how linked, should I say, or how focused you are on your topic, or are you thinking a little bit broader? Because I mean, your topic is in a way, I mean, quite, should I say, quite technical. If you go, I don't know, you didn't say if you go into production or if you go actually into the, let's say, influence on environment and things like that, or are you rather linking that to, I don't know, managerial steps? Are you linking that in a way how to shape the policy? Have you thought how actually that might influence, I don't know, working places? Have you, I mean, you just have to, I mean, as I said, because I've worked actually quite for a long time in the environment area, but still, you have to tell us a little bit more. I don't know, you know, if you don't see that gap in your should I say technical area, then maybe you should search a little bit to the right and to the left of that area and actually try to bring the stuff together in order to find that research gap. Once again, for me, a research gap is something that is a gap in knowledge as well, because usually we say whatever we have researched, we theoretically publish. In case we do not publish that, then that is for the wider audience a gap in knowledge, and that can be then further in a way identified with the research gap, because based on the research gap you will then finally form a research question, and then the following steps will actually follow. So once again, for me, the research gap is, and that is what we are trying to bring, let's say, up to the students that, but while we are discussing with them, I mean, I cannot stress enough, and Prof. Valerie will actually definitely agree with me, I cannot stress enough how important this step is for each of the students, for each of the PhDs finally, even for the outcome of the PhD. And has to be discussed a lot with your supervisors. So supervisors have to be there, have to support you, have you tell you actually how and in which direction you should go. But once again, as I said, you would have to tell us a little bit more, and you are always happy to join us where we are having actually our free discussion hours, Mondays, I guess once per month, that we go a little bit deeper into that, and we are trying actually to understand your problem, let's say your issue a little bit better, and then we might actually kind of guide you. But the idea is, if you don't see it after 7-8 months, that means that you have to go a little bit to the right or to the left and try to figure out what might be actually that topic which hasn't been there yet. Because if you have read a lot of papers, as you have mentioned, and all the ideas, all the topics, all your questions, not research questions, but all your questions around that topic have already been answered, then you have to probably go a little bit, as I said, and link it maybe to another topic in order to, or go a little bit to another area in order to find something that hasn't been, once again, published yet. And that is, for me, hasn't been published yet, means we don't have the knowledge, generally, we don't have the knowledge on this topic. I don't know, that's my view. Prof. Valerie?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question, and thank you also for your words there and your thoughts, Dr. Bostian. Yeah, I agree with everything Dr. Bostian has said. It's you should by now start to be seeing something coming through, and maybe it's you have to change the scope a little bit of your reading. So your reading is really in the area of scope. You know, where do you put the boundaries? How far away from the topic do you read, and how much what you should be able to find after a lot of reading is that your scope narrows. So you might start with a fairly broad scope, but as you get into it and get familiar with the different sub areas, there should be a narrowing and converging around things that aren't known. There's also then you can start getting into the depth. But I'll come back to these in a moment, because I would say that a very important question to ask yourself is, how am I reading? How am I particularly putting together the knowledge that I'm getting from this reading that I'm doing? And I've had students in this situation, I probably have been guilty of it myself in my own research. If you are approaching a literature review, fishing, looking for, expecting a gap to come out of one or two articles, and no, it's not in this article, I'll go on to the next one, that's not telling me anything, I'll go to the next one, etc. You can spend more than 7 or 8 months getting nowhere. So I think how you do your reading, and particularly how you put together your thoughts and reflections as you're reading, is absolutely critical to this. So for example, I'm not sure how you are recording what you're reading. Some students will use tables, particularly highlighting areas of the papers. You mentioned that you've read the papers through, you know, from beginning to end, and you're not sure that's been the right way. Yes and no. If it's clear that the articles are not contributing anything, then maybe you don't need to go into that much depth. But anything that is giving you a little hook, you should perhaps explore further, because it's often in the detail that the gaps start to become evident. And it's only when you've put together and identified that same kind of set of issues that actually the gap emerges. But you're the one that's putting that together. The papers that you're reading are not going to do that for you necessarily, unless you're very lucky. So I would say, in a nutshell, basically, definitely record what you're reading. Record, I would say have a table. I used actually in Vivo, a kind of organizing system when I did my PhD a long time ago, one of the very first versions, which enabled me to organize what I was reading. The ends of the articles will almost always highlight research areas for future research. That's always, if you don't know what you're looking for, and I'll come back to that very in just a moment. If you're not sure what you're looking for, almost every good article will have some areas, recommended areas for future research. Document that, log that. When you've got 40, 50 sets of that, you'll get a sense of what's the common theme coming through here in terms of future research. There may be a gap there I can focus on. The beginning of the articles, every article has a research and a theoretical justification. What are they doing? They are fulfilling a need by publishing that article. Is there room for a slightly different approach, or to contribute further to filling that need? So how you structure what you're reading is really critical, the thinking that you're putting behind it. Now, finally, there was a question from one of the audience on, is a systematic literature review necessary? We three, Dr. Andreas, Dr. Bosch, and I may differ in this, I'm not sure. We have never discussed this between us, I don't think, but systematic literature reviews are something that seems to be quite kind of trendy these days, as opposed to the more traditional kind of literature review. My take on this is that a systematic literature review you go into with a fair degree of, I wouldn't say certainty, but some sense of what you're looking for, where you're going. It's organized, it's structured, you know exactly the topics that you're going to be looking for in the literature review. You will discard others. So you've already gone through a process where you're pretty clear, fairly clear, not clear at all, but have some clarity around the area that you're looking at. And yes, absolutely has its place. It's very thorough. There's a really good audit trail in the way that you come up with your own thinking from that. So definitely has its place. If you're in a situation where you are really exploring still where these gaps come from, and you're not quite sure which literatures are going to be contributing, you're looking to the literature to really bring out the research questions and gaps, then you may find a more traditional way of looking at the literature, at least to start with, might be beneficial. So a literature review, definitely. What kind of literature review you do is a little bit dependent on your topic and what you're looking for. So that's probably all I'd like to say for now.
Thank you both. Let me please, Professor Bostian, quickly summarize it and also point to the analogy. As Professor Bostian started out, he said on our discussion list, this actually is a second question. And the first question would have been, what is a research gap? Now, literally speaking, the same seems to be valid for the situation that Karma is finding himself in, and which is one of the reasons of disagreement in between Professor Bostian and myself. Professor Bostian likes to say, go and read. Now, if I say that to my students, exactly that happens what Karma is experiencing. 7 months gone, still not there. Professor Bostian and Professor Lindsay also said three things in a nutshell. There's a question that still must be unknown. There's a topic, aka a research problem, and that research problem cannot be solved or is not understood because there are questions not known. And this not known is what constitutes either the research gap, the literature gap, or the knowledge gap. Knowledge gap is first and foremost what you do not know. After 7 months, you will know a lot of things, having read so much. So you can likely tell what could be the gap in the literature that still cannot answer that question. And then as a third step, you can check, why has there no research been conducted? I mean, the literature is the result of research being conducted, and someone should have conducted research already on that. So you can go one step further and check who are the people who are research active in that area and why haven't they answered that question. So from this perspective, and now linking it back to what I would argue is a systematic literature review, this is a very structured way and therefore systematic in some regard. But that's also, I would argue, the traditional way you review the literature. Very structured, focused, and with a clear purpose, right?